What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Welcome back to the channel for another episode in the Ask Me Anything series. The third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is officially over. The Stanley Cup finals are set, so we're going to talk a little bit about that in this video, amongst other things. But before we get started, as always, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to each and every one of you who took the time to come up with a question and either send it in on Twitter or leave it under the community tab post. Even if your question doesn't get featured in the video, just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. If you guys enjoy this series and you want to see another episode in the near future, be sure to leave this video a like. That's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does help out the videos a ton. And if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and kick off the episode with the first question from HockeyBuds8, who says Stanley Cup final predictions, and it looks like you have Oilers in 7. Not a bad prediction at all. I am really looking forward to this series. I think it's an exciting matchup, going to be a lot of star power on display. I will never get tired of watching the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl play, and when it comes to the Florida Panthers, they play a very exciting, up-tempo, in-your-face, fast style of hockey, so I think it should make for a really good Stanley Cup Finals, and I'm actually not even sure who I want to see win. One of my best friends is a Florida fan, so I'm kind of pulling for them, but at the same time, I'd really like to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup, and I think it would be cool to see McDavid get his first, so whatever the outcome ends up being, I'll be pretty happy either way. As far as my prediction goes, I've went back and forth on this one. I do think Florida is the deeper, more well-rounded, complete team. At 5-on-5, I definitely think I have to give the edge to the Florida Panthers, but it's going to be crucial for them to stay out of the box and stay disciplined. You do not want to give this Edmonton Oilers team opportunity after opportunity on the power play, because that's where they're going to hurt you. The Oilers' special teams have been absolutely dominant throughout the playoffs so far. Not just the power play, but the penalty kill too has been exceptional. So I'm definitely expecting special teams to play a pretty big factor in this series. I think you have to give Florida the advantage in the goaltending matchup as well. Stuart Skinner has had his moments, and he's came up big for the Oilers at times throughout the playoffs. Last night especially had a massive game to close out Dallas in Game 6, but Sergei Bobrovsky has definitely been the more consistent of the two. He's more experienced. He's played a lot more playoff games than Skinner, so I feel like Florida definitely has to feel pretty good about the goaltending matchup heading into this series. I've been rambling on long enough, though. I got to make a prediction. I'm leaning towards Florida. I think it's going to be a long series. I can't see either of these teams going out in 4 or 5 games, so for my final prediction, I'm going to say Florida, and I'm going to say it takes them all 7 games. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from JerryBoss68, who says, I read an article stating that Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith are the next Crosby Malkin or Taves Kane duo. Do you think they have that potential? And also, really appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you enjoy the videos. I never like to compare prospects to NHL greats, like a Crosby, Malkin, Kane, or Taves. I feel like you're kind of just setting yourself up for failure when you have your expectations set that high. I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible that Smith and Celebrini end up being a duo on the level of those guys. I do think they both have limitless potential, and I do feel like it's a safe bet to say San Jose's future is pretty set down the middle with these two guys. Macklin Celebrini is expected to be a franchise-altering center, and I honestly think Will Smith is a lot closer to being in the same tier of a prospect as Celebrini as some people think. I think they're both going to be unreal. They combined for over 130 points in the NCAA this past season. Will Smith playing for Boston College and Macklin Celebrini playing for Boston University. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Smith and Celebrini are going to be as good as Kane and Taves or as good as Malkin and Crosby, but I definitely think they could be San Jose's version of that kind of duo where you have, 2 young prospects drafted around the same time that come in and just completely turn a franchise around and are the faces of a franchise for, a decade plus. The next question we have comes from Breadloaf VR, who says, what's a team that you think will make the playoffs next year that didn't this year, and what's a team that made the playoffs this year that you think won't next year? And also, appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you enjoy the videos. This is a pretty easy one for me. Don't have to think about this too long. I would be genuinely shocked if the Washington Capitals are able to make the playoffs again next year, so I'm going to go with them as a team that made it this year that's going to fall out next year, and for a team that didn't make it this year that I think will next year, I'm definitely expecting New Jersey to get back in, hopefully a more stable goaltending situation with Jake Allen and potentially somebody else if they add another goaltender over the course of the offseason, and a healthy Dougie Hamilton I think is going to be the biggest thing for them. I really like Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec, but as rookies this past season, I feel like they were probably relied upon a little bit too much to carry that New Jersey Devils blue line as rookies, so I think getting Hamilton back is going to be huge, and yeah, I'm expecting New Jersey to get back into the playoffs for sure next season. The next question we have comes from Christian, who says, Cole Perfetti is set to become an RFA after the season, but was up and down the lineup this season with games where he was a healthy scratch, with other younger pieces like Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov waiting in the NHL. What do you think the future looks like for Cole Perfetti? And also appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you enjoy the videos. If I was a Jets fan, I would not be worried about Cole Perfetti whatsoever. Sure, he was a healthy scratch down the stretch at times this past season, but I mean, especially after the deadline, adding Monahan into Foley, you look at the Winnipeg Jets forward group, like that was a really deep team, and Perfetti's one of those guys where if he's in the lineup, ideally you want him at the very least playing, in the top 9, playing on the second power play unit, not stapled to the fourth line, playing 9 minutes tonight in a shutdown role. So I don't really think it was anything Cole Perfetti was doing wrong or he was playing terrible, and that's why he was a healthy scratch at times. It's just the Jets had a really deep forward group and somebody had to sit, and it's not like Cole Perfetti was in the press box for every game. He got into the lineup at times in the playoffs and in, towards the end of the regular season. I'm expecting Perfetti to be probably a mainstay in the Jets' top 6 next season. This is a guy who scored 19 goals in just 71 games this past season, despite playing, around 13 and a half minutes a night. Cole Perfetti is insanely talented, has a ton of potential, and especially now with the new head coach, I think it's only a matter of time before he gets the opportunity to play consistent minutes in the top 6 and really pop off and, show what he can do across a full season playing a bigger role. As far as his contract situation with him being an RFA currently, I think the most likely outcome is a bridge deal, maybe something, in the range of 2 years, 3 mil, 3.5, something like that. Moving along now, the next question we have comes from Sam Wan's Bone, who says, what was a prediction you made for this season that you were completely wrong about? Also love the vids, watching all the way from New Zealand. Thank you for the support. I always love to hear, where you guys are watching from New Zealand. That's pretty crazy. So like across the world, pretty much, it's 5:35 p.m. here in Nova Scotia as of the time I'm recording this. So it's like 8:30 a.m. or something in New Zealand. I'd be curious to hear who your favorite team is and how you really started to get into watching hockey. So let me know down below. To answer your question though, what was the prediction I made before the season started that I was completely wrong about? There's definitely a couple. I would say the biggest has to be predicting Boston to miss the playoffs. And not only did I have them just missing out on the playoffs, I think I actually had Ottawa and Buffalo both finishing ahead of Boston. So just an absolutely brutal take on my part. Next up, this question comes from Lil Timmy, who says, would you rather have Wyatt Johnston or Alexis Lafreniere? I will say, I think over the course of this season and throughout the playoffs, Lafreniere has almost become underrated. Sure, he isn't the game-breaking, franchise-altering player yet that people expected him to be when he was drafted, but he is developing and getting better slowly but surely, and I think he kind of flew under the radar this year and had a pretty strong season. That being said, the answer to this question is pretty easy. It has to be Wyatt Johnston. He's younger, and there has already been long stretches throughout this season, and even in the playoffs where Wyatt Johnston already looks like the Dallas Stars' best player. Wyatt Johnston has all the makings of being a legit game breaker for the Dallas Stars. I would not be surprised at all to see him be around a point per game player next season, so I would definitely be taking Wyatt Johnston over Lafreniere. If you put these guys side by side and didn't tell anybody the name of the players and just put their age and point production, take away where they were drafted, I mean, everybody would be taking Wyatt Johnston. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from VGK Outsider, who says, do you believe Marchessault re-signs with Vegas, given there's been no talks up to this point and the cap situation? I find it hard to believe Vegas would just let him walk as a UFA. I mean, the guy scored 42 goals this year. They probably don't make the playoffs without him. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoffs MVP when they won the Cup in 2023. He's one of the OGs. He's been there from the start. He's a fan favorite. I think that's a guy that you almost have to try and do everything in your power to bring back. But it's not going to be easy because, again, Marchessault just had a career year, 42 goals. He's probably going to be looking for a raise from his previous cap of $5 million. It's definitely not going to be easy for Vegas to make it work. And another thing that people are already looking towards is Shea Theodore, who's going to be heading into the final year of his contract this season. That's another guy you'd have to imagine Vegas is going to want to extend, and he's another guy who's going to be looking for a big raise. I'm really intrigued to see what Vegas ends up doing. I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason for them, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them kind of shock everybody and come out of nowhere with a big cap dump trade similar to when they traded Pacioretty a couple years ago. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Dwayne Bacon, who says, hope all is well and always look forward to your videos. Appreciate the support and hope everything's good with you too. What's next for the Rangers in your opinion? Lots of people have lots of different ideas, and I'd like to get your thoughts. After the Rangers lost to Florida in Game 6, I was honestly a little bit surprised by how many people were suggesting that the Rangers need to, blow it up and make some big change. Like, they lost in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals to a fantastic Florida team, a Florida team that just made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. In my opinion, the Rangers are going to be just fine, and they're still set up pretty nicely to be a Stanley Cup contender for at least the next 3-4 seasons. Heading into next season, a couple things. Obviously, you're hoping Filip Chytil can stay healthy because I think, when he's healthy, it's a different team. It's a much deeper team down the middle, and and he's going to be an important player for them. Obviously, you're hoping Lafreniere takes another step in the right direction like he did this season. You're just hoping he continues to get better and better. Some things that I think the Rangers could maybe change. I feel like, with Kaapo Kakko being an RFA this offseason, it's probably time to move on. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen in New York, him breaking out and coming anywhere close to, the player that everyone thought he was going to be when he was selected second overall. His value is probably pretty low right now, and I don't think the Rangers would get anything insane in return, but 23 years old, being a former second overall draft pick, there's going to be some teams interested, and I think the Rangers should probably look to part ways with Kaapo Kakko and get something in return before his value is nothing, if he has a couple more seasons like the one that he just had. I also feel like it could benefit the Rangers to maybe try to shed some salary cap, maybe Barclay Goodrow. I know there's a lot of fans that like him, but I think he just makes way too much money for the kind of role that he plays with this team, and it might look like the Rangers have a decent amount of cap space right now, but next offseason, K'Andre Miller, Lafreniere, and the big one, Igor Shesterkin, are all going to need extensions, and that's going to take up a lot of cap space, so you want to have some flexibility heading into next year's offseason. I know Rangers fans are very upset with how the season ended, but I don't think this team really needs to do anything all that drastic or overreact. This is a good team. I think they're still going to be a very good team next season. I really wouldn't worry about the Rangers all that much. I still think they're in a really good position. They have their next 3 first-round draft picks. They have some really good prospects in the system, and some solid young players already on the roster that could be used as trade chips if they do, want to go out and make a big splash. And now finally, finishing out this episode with the last question from Mashi Yank, who says, in your opinion, what is the biggest regret the Red Wings have done since you've been a fan of the team? It can be a free agent signing, a trade that went bad, picking the wrong prospect, etc. Since I got back into hockey, it's been the Devils trading for PK Subban for 2 seconds. The first thing that comes to mind as far as the biggest regret for the Red Wings, since I've been watching them, is probably just, them trying to hold on to the playoff streak too long and just continuing year after year to, kick the can that is the rebuild down the road further and further. And sure, the Red Wings, did probably add an extra couple years to that playoff streak, but even in those later years they were making the playoffs, I mean, everybody knew that they weren't really a threat to actually go far in the playoffs. So I definitely think the Red Wings would have benefited a lot from starting the rebuild a little bit earlier. Another thing that immediately comes to my mind, I know hindsight is 2020, but drafting Philip Zadina over Quinn Hughes, and hell, even drafting Philip Zadina over Evan Bouchard, but Quinn Hughes especially stings. He played for Michigan in college, had ties to Detroit. To be fair though, Philip Zadina was, expected to go in the range of, 3 to 4, so when he slipped to Detroit at number 6, I think every Red Wings fan was pretty excited, and it was almost like the Red Wings, got an alley-oop thrown to them, and they did end up taking Philip Zadina, which I was really excited about at the time, especially being from Halifax, Zadina playing his junior hockey with the Mooseheads. So what can you really do? I think there's a lot of other GMs, if they were in Ken Holland's position, they probably would have went with Philip Zadina as well. It just really sucks looking back, knowing that they could have had somebody like Quinn Hughes or even Evan Bouchard. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, as always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who participated, who left a question, even the ones that don't get featured in the video. I read them all. I appreciate all of you guys, and you all make these videos so much fun for me to do. If you enjoyed this episode and you want another one in the next couple of weeks, then be sure to leave this video a like. That is the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all again soon.